All right, deep divers. Today we are going to be taking a look at a really, really fascinating book. It's called The Divine Instructions of Diet by Amir Tuchman.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Where does it take us?
Well, strap in, because we're talking about the Bible, history, science, even some hidden meanings in ancient Hebrew.
Wow, that's quite a mix. So what's the core argument here? What's the author trying to get across?
Okay, so the thing that really hooked me was this idea that the Bible actually lays out 3 distinct diets for humanity. And each one is tied to like a different point in human history and how we relate to nature.
Okay, now that's fascinating. So it's not just a set of rules, but like a progression or a reflection of something deeper.
Exactly. And the author doesn't just present them as a list. He connects them to bigger ideas about how energy flows in the natural world. The choices we make about food, how those impact that balance.
So let's break it down. What are these 3 diets?
All right, so the first one, the author calls it the Edenic diet. Takes us all the way back to, the Garden of Eden, Genesis 1.2930. And it's purely vegetarian, totally focused on harmony with nature.
Makes sense, like a pure, untouched state.
Exactly. Then we fast forward, so to speak, to after the flood, Genesis 9.3. The author actually points to the original Hebrew text, and he makes the case that this post-flood diet allows for some insects, but still no meat from animals.
So a bit of a shift, but still pretty restrictive.
Right. It's not until we get to the Mosaic Law, with all those kosher rules, that things open up a bit more. Some animals become okay to eat, others are forbidden.
And even then, there are all those very specific guidelines, like what parts of the animal you can eat and how it has to be prepared.
Yeah, exactly. Now get this. The author then goes into this whole concept of food as energy, literally, like scientifically. He describes every creature, us included, as like an energy converter in this giant natural system.
So how does he explain that?
He uses this concept called trophic levels. It's basically like a hierarchy of how energy gets transferred in nature.
Okay, go on. I'm listening.
So plants are at the bottom. They're the primary producers, right? They capture energy from the sun. Then herbivores eat the plants and get energy from them, and so on, up the food chain. Each level gets energy from the one below it.
Makes sense. But how does he tie this energy flow idea back to the biblical diets?
All right, so this is where he makes a pretty bold claim.
Mm-hmm.
He suggests that the biblical flood, that huge disruption, might have actually been caused by an imbalance in this natural energy flow.
Hold on. You're saying eating meat could have caused the flood?
Well, not in a direct cause and effect way. But think about it. If creatures start, eating each other in a way that messes up the natural order, that flow of energy gets distorted.
Okay, I see what you mean. Like too much energy is being pulled from certain levels and not enough is flowing back in.
Exactly. It's like a domino effect. And he suggests this imbalance could have biblical level consequences.
So is he saying that our modern diet, which for many is heavily reliant on meat, is like setting us up for another flood?
He doesn't say it outright, but he definitely wants us to think about it.
Mm.
Are we messing with that balance? And if we are, what might happen? Especially with all the environmental challenges we're facing today.
That's a sobering thought. It really makes you reconsider what's on your plate.
For sure. Now, another thing that got me thinking was his take on carnivores. He argues that the original ones weren't actually hunters, but more like cleaners.
Cleaners, like what do you mean?
He paints this picture of nature where carnivores had this very specific role. They weren't out there killing just for the fun of it. They maintained balance by eating animals that had already died naturally.
So they were more like nature's cleanup crew.
Exactly. And he connects this back to those kosher laws we were talking about. The animals that are forbidden in kosher law, a lot of them are scavengers, the ones that eat decaying matter.
Okay, so it's like those forbidden animals, they were playing this crucial role in the ecosystem.
Exactly. So if even carnivores weren't originally designed to kill for food, where does that leave us? What's that say about humans and what we were meant to eat?
That is a question that really gets you thinking, doesn't it?
Big time. Now get this. He brings in this whole concept called anagrammatic reading. Have you ever heard of that?
Anagrammatic reading? No, can't say I have. What's that all about?
So it's something biblical scholars use to find, like, hidden meanings in the Hebrew text. It involves rearranging the letters of a word to reveal deeper connections. Like, he gives the example of the Hebrew word for old age. You can rearrange those letters to spell damage or drainage.
Wow, that's fascinating. So it's like secret messages encoded in the language itself.
Yeah, pretty much. And he applies this same idea to food. He's saying the Bible is actually connecting both physical, spiritual purity to what we eat.
Okay, now that's a powerful link. So it's not just about what's good for our bodies, but for our souls too.
Exactly. And he uses the story of Daniel and his companions from the book of Daniel as an example. Remember how they thrived on a vegetarian diet while everyone else was struggling?
Oh, yeah, that's right. They were like super healthy and strong.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It seems to be saying that our food choices have consequences that go way beyond just our physical health.
Right, like they impact us on this deeper level, the spiritual level. Definitely something to ponder. And it ties into this larger theme the author keeps coming back to, the sixth commandment, thou shalt not kill. He expands it way beyond just human life.
So he's applying thou shalt not kill to all creatures.
Yes, and he takes it even further. He's saying it applies to nature as a whole and even to our own bodies.
Whoa, hold on. How can we be killing our own bodies with food?
Well, that's the question he wants us to grapple with. Are we slowly harming ourselves with the wrong foods? Are we disrupting that delicate balance? It really is. It kind of flips the script on how we usually think about our food choices.
Right. It's not just about what we're putting in our mouths, but also like this bigger picture of respect and balance.
Exactly. And that actually leads us to how the author brings in this whole scientific perspective.
Okay, yeah, you mentioned something about science earlier. How does he connect that to all this?
Well, he dives into this idea that every creature, every single one, from the tiniest ant to us humans, is like a finely tuned machine. He calls us biophysical machines.
Biophysical machines. Okay, that's a new one. What does he mean by that?
Basically, he's saying that each of these machines, each creature, has this specific role to play in converting and transmitting energy within the ecosystem. Like, he compares it to human-made machines. You wouldn't put diesel in a gasoline engine, right?
Nope. That'd be a disaster.
Exactly. And he's saying the same logic applies to nature. Each creature is designed to process a specific type of energy. And when we deviate from that design, well, there can be consequences.
So what kind of consequences is he talking about? Like, what happens when we eat the wrong fuel for our human machines?
Well, he points to a lot of the health issues we're struggling with today. Obesity, weakened immune systems, allergies, you name it, even anxiety. He argues that our bodies are constantly fighting against things that aren't natural for them. Processed foods, artificial ingredients, all that stuff. It's like we're waging war on our own bodies.
That's a powerful way to put it.
Precisely. And he describes it as this vicious cycle. A poor diet leads to health problems, which then leads people to rely even more on those unhealthy foods and medications. It's a hard spiral to escape.
So if we're stuck in that cycle, how do we get out? What's the solution?
Well, he definitely lays out a path forward, a way to reclaim our health and get back in sync with our natural design. And a big part of that path is transitioning to a vegan diet, one that prioritizes fresh fruits and vegetables, whole grains, that kind of thing.
So he's advocating for a complete shift away from all animal products.
Yes. He sees a vegan diet as the most natural and energy-efficient way for humans to eat. Like, it aligns with our biophysical design and that natural flow of energy we talked about before.
It's a big change for a lot of people. But I could see how it connects to the whole idea of minimizing harm and respecting all living beings.
Absolutely. And he uses this interesting analogy of a dietary traffic light. Vegan is the green light, the go-ahead for health and vitality. And the further we stray from that, the closer we get to the red light, the danger zone.
That's a great visual. It really drives home the point that these choices, they have real consequences.
And he's not just talking physical consequences either, but also mental and emotional ones. He makes this fascinating connection between diet and anxiety.
Tell me more about that. I've definitely noticed how what I eat affects how anxious I feel.
He's saying that when we bombard our bodies with all these unhealthy substances, it creates a state of internal stress. Our systems are overwhelmed and our bodies are trying to signal us that something's wrong.
So those feelings of anxiety could be our body trying to communicate with us, like, hey, something's off here.
That's exactly what he suggests. And he really stresses the importance of mindful eating, paying attention to what we put into our bodies and how it makes us feel. Not just physically, but emotionally, too.
Yeah, tuning into those signals, right?
Yeah.
Making choices that support our overall well-being.
Exactly. And he offers some really practical tips to get us back in touch with those signals. Simple things, like starting your day with fresh fruit instead of that sugary cereal, or swapping out cow's milk for a plant-based alternative.
Those are definitely doable swaps, changes most people could make without totally overhauling their lives.
Right. And his point is that what we eat, it's not just about our own individual health, but it's about the health of the whole system, Everything is interconnected.
Okay, that makes sense. It seems like he's advocating for a more balanced approach overall, listening to our bodies, making conscious choices, finding what works for us.
Exactly. It's about tuning into that inner wisdom, rediscovering those natural rhythms that our bodies already have.
I like that. Now, you mentioned before that he challenges some common beliefs about food.
The one about protein. You know how we're always told we need to eat meat to get enough protein?
Oh, yeah, that's definitely something I grew up hearing.
Well, he argues that plants actually contain all the essential amino acids our bodies need to make their own protein, and he suggests that a plant-based diet might even be more efficient because it provides a more balanced and easily absorbed source of those amino acids.
So we don't actually need to eat meat to get enough protein.
That's what he's proposing. And he doesn't stop there. He also gets into the world of enzymes, those proteins that kickstart all the chemical reactions in our bodies?
Yeah, I've heard the word, but honestly, I'm not sure what they really do.
They're like these tiny workers that keep our bodies running smoothly. They help us digest food, absorb nutrients, all sorts of essential stuff.
So where do we get them?
He stresses the importance of getting enzymes from natural sources, like fresh fruits and veggies. He says cooked and processed foods often have their enzymes destroyed, which makes those foods harder to digest and less nutritious.
So it's like we're getting shortchanged on those little helpers when we eat processed foods.
Exactly. It's not just about how many calories something has, but also about its vitality, how much life force it actually contains. Now, he also talks about oxidation, that process that damages our cells and contributes to aging.
Yeah, that's the one we try to fight with all those antioxidants, right?
Exactly. And he points out that a plant-based diet is naturally full of antioxidants. Vitamin C, vitamin E, beta-carotene, all those good things.
So, more plants equals less aging. Sign me up.
Well, it's not quite that simple, but he's definitely suggesting that a plant-based diet can help slow down the aging process. And he talks about the importance of vitamins and minerals in general. He says a plant-based diet can provide a rich and balanced source of all those essential nutrients. He even provides a whole list of specific vitamins and minerals and where to find the best plant-based sources.
It's like a roadmap for building a truly nourishing diet.
Exactly. And he really encourages us to become informed consumers. He wants us to read labels, do our research, and really think about the choices we're making.
Now, for someone who's thinking about making the switch to a vegan diet, what kind of advice does he give?
He actually emphasizes taking it one step at a time, like maybe start by gradually reducing your meat and dairy intake, experiment with new plant-based recipes.
That seems more realistic, easing into it rather than going cold turkey.
Right, and he acknowledges that it's not just about the food itself. There are mental and emotional aspects to changing your diet, like old habits, social pressures, all of that can be tough.
Yeah, food is such a big part of our culture and traditions.
Exactly. He encourages people to find support, whether it's from friends, family, or maybe an online community, and to focus on the positive changes you're making rather than what you're giving up.
That's a good mindset shift, celebrating those wins.
Absolutely. And he also stresses self-compassion. It's okay to slip up sometimes. It's a journey, not a race to be perfect.
That's reassuring, takes the pressure off.
Yeah.
What other interesting points does he bring up about our relationship with food?
He has a really thought-provoking section on the history of cooking. He points out that, cooking evolved out of necessity, but it's also had some unintended consequences, like it can destroy nutrients and enzymes in our food, making it less nutritious and harder to digest.
So he's not saying we should never cook our food, right?
No, he's suggesting finding a balance, incorporating both cooked and raw foods into our diets. And he says to pay attention to cooking times. Like try to cook things lightly rather than overcooking them to preserve more of those nutrients.
So finding that sweet spot, getting the benefits of both raw and cooked.
Right. And he also emphasizes the importance of variety in our diets. Eating a wide range of different fruits, vegetables, and whole grains. It provides a wider spectrum of nutrients and also helps prevent boredom.
So it's not just about eating the same healthy things over and over, but mixing it up, exploring new flavors and textures.
Exactly. It should be enjoyable, sustainable. Be a discerning consumer, read those labels carefully, and try to choose foods that are as close to their natural state as possible.
So it's about taking back control of our food choices, not just blindly accepting what's marketed to us.
Exactly. And he also wants us to think about the ethics of our food choices, the impact they have on the environment and on animal welfare.
So it's not just about us as individuals, but about the well-being of the planet as a whole.
He really believes our food choices have these far-reaching consequences, that we have this responsibility to make choices that are sustainable and compassionate.
That's powerful. It's acknowledging our interconnectedness with all living beings.
Exactly. Now, this is where things get really interesting. He also talks about the connection between diet and spirituality.
Ooh, tell me more about that. I love that idea that food can have a spiritual dimension.
He points out that a lot of ancient cultures saw food as a sacred offering, a way to connect with the divine. He says we can get back to that sense of reverence by choosing foods that are pure, natural, life-giving.
It's like seeing food as more than just fuel, but as nourishment for our bodies and our souls. I love that. Approaching life with a sense of awe.
Exactly. And to live more consciously.
And speaking of connections, one thing that really stuck with me was the author's idea about how our modern perception of death might be completely different from how our ancestors viewed it.
Yeah, that was a fascinating point.
What if, early humans didn't see death as this abrupt ending? What if they saw it as a transition to another state of being?
It really challenges how we think about death today, doesn't it? Our fear of it, our obsession with trying to prolong life no matter what.
Totally. It's like we've lost touch with that natural cycle of life and death.
And maybe that disconnect is at the root of a lot of the anxiety we have around aging.
Right, like we're fighting against something that's inevitable.
He also touches on the idea that those early humans might have had this much deeper connection to nature, almost like a sixth sense.
An intuition that guided them?
Exactly. He compares Neanderthals, who were mostly meat eaters, to early Homo sapiens, who had a more plant-based diet.
And he points out that Homo sapiens lived much longer.
It makes you wonder, doesn't it? He suggests that maybe that difference in diet actually played a role in the development of human consciousness and intelligence.
Wow, that's a mind-blowing thought. Our ancestors' plant-based lifestyle could have helped them tap into this higher level of awareness.
A more intuitive, interconnected way of being. He even suggests that they might have experimented with psychedelic plants as a way to explore different states of consciousness.
And you know what else is interesting? He talks about this sudden explosion of human creativity that happened around 10,000 BC.
Right. The development of agriculture, art, spirituality, all of that.
He suggests it might have been triggered by a shift in human consciousness, a new way of seeing the world and what we're capable of.
Like we suddenly woke up to the possibilities and started creating, exploring, expanding our horizons.
And he ties this shift back to changes in diet, suggesting that a plant-based lifestyle might have played a role in freeing up our mental and creative energy.
It's fascinating to think that what we eat can shape our thoughts, our emotions, even our capacity for innovation.
Right. We're not just physical beings, we're also energetic and spiritual beings.
And everything we do, including what we eat, affects us on all those levels.
As we wrap up this deep dive into the divine instruction of diet, I'm just filled with this sense of hope and possibility.
Me too. It's like he's given us a roadmap for reclaiming our health, our vitality, and our connection to nature.
Exactly. It's a reminder that we have the power to create a better future for ourselves, our communities, the planet.
And it all starts with something as simple yet profound as what we choose to eat.
This deep dive has been a true game changer for me. I'm definitely going to be rethinking my grocery list and really paying attention to the energy I'm putting into my body.
It's a journey, that's for sure. And I encourage everyone to keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep listening to the wisdom of your own body.
And thank you to all our listeners for joining us on this deep dive into the fascinating world of food, health, and spirituality.
Remember, every meal is a chance to nourish yourself and to make a positive impact on the world around you.
So true. Until next time, may your food choices nourish you on every level.